Bomani Jones of ESPN, Dan Le Batard show, Around the Horn, and I guess he's been corresponding with Mark Cuban here, going back. Is that fair to say, Bomani, you've been corresponding with Mark Cuban?
Let's be a little more accurate about what's going on here. I said something about Cuban's quotes. Cuban replied to me on Twitter and said that he asked if I'd seen the interview, and I told him no. I had read the quotes, and then I watched the interview, and then he started going back and forth with me, and I told him that if I misunderstood anything, to send me a direct message and send me his contact information, and then we could talk. And then he kept going back and forth in public, and then I called his assistant and said, could you please send him my information? And so we could talk about this, and he kept going back and forth about it in public, which is not the most efficient way to actually get straight what we're actually discussing. So you can do the two-on-two on what's going on here.
Well, are you bothered by any of these comments here? What struck you?
Well, I'm generally not bothered by the things that people say. The things that bother me on this is, like, I think people have come to this conclusion that I said that Mark Cuban was a racist, which is certainly not true. And I think that people have come to a conclusion that I have done this to seek some sort of attention. And like I told you, I tried to go talk to the man with nobody around. My thing with Cuban on his quotes is I'm not here to give Cuban a whole lot of credit for copping the bias. Like, I don't think that's praiseworthy, right? I do think, however, that him copping to the biases in the way that he did was important because when the Donald Sterling thing happened, everybody wanted to point their finger at somebody else, right? Like the whole thing. Donald Sterling was the village idiot, and it was real easy for us to pick on the village idiot. Look what the village idiot has done, so forth and so on. I appreciated Cuban saying, look, we got our own things that we've got to deal with, and that's how we've got to be part of the solution, not just kind of pointing our fingers at somebody else. Like, for that, I applaud him. He took it a step further. He's like, if I see a kid in the hood, and if I got this wrong, you guys let me know. He said, if I see a kid in the hoodie, and a black kid in the hoodie, I might want to cross the street. If I see a white guy, skinhead with a bunch of tattoos, I might want to cross the street. And I just thought that's a false equivalence, and that's kind of if those are the things that you say make you cross the street, then it speaks to another problem. That doesn't make Mark Cuban a racist, but I think it speaks to an issue that we have of just how easy it is for people to find black people scary. And now all of a sudden I'm the racist from everybody. Now, these are all things I said on Twitter, so you let me know what I said that sounds racist, Dan.
Well, I think the important part is you're asking to have a private conversation with Cuban because when you have it play out like this over Twitter, then it sort of takes away the serious nature tone of it. Now it's like a verbal tennis match, and so I think you're trying to take the high road. We asked Cuban to come on. He didn't want to, but he can't help but talk about this. And I understand the context of what he's saying and when he said it, but I think he went too far. If he just said, look, we live in glass houses, I think what he's doing is offering up a defense of Donald Sterling, whether he's trying to or not, to say there's private comments. We're all like this. Hey, I'm going to be transparent. How about you? That was the feeling I got of what he was trying to say. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I said on Twitter, and he told me I was wrong for saying this. I said that he made the point that if we're going to get rid of this guy's team for being a bigot, which I don't think they should be allowed to do. I don't think they should be allowed to take Sterling's team from him. I said, but if they're going to take this guy's team for being a bigot, then who's going to get to keep their team? And he told me I was 100% wrong about that. So I would agree with you, except he says that we're wrong about that, but I thought that was a pretty clear inference to take from the statement that he made.
Is it good to have this discourse, though?
Well, it's good to have this discourse. It's not good to have this discourse in the way that he and I are currently having it. The discourse is incredibly necessary. It's very, very important. And I think that part of the discourse that's important that Cuban pointed to that I think is really important is that if we keep getting into this thing about wagging our fingers at somebody for committing one bigoted or even a racist act, we wind up missing the point. We all grew up in this country. We all grew up with the values that it has, and one of those values has typically been racism. So we have to be able to talk it out, but we got to be able to talk it out in a way that doesn't involve simply pointing our fingers at people and saying, "Oh, there's a racist." Like that's not my kind of party. It's never been my kind of party. We can't do that. And I thought that was the point that Cuban was making. I do not think the way that this escalated is productive for anybody, and I don't think that it turned into, oh man, Cuban's frying Bomani. Oh man, nobody listened to Bomani and all of this stuff. And maybe those things are correct. I'm sure nobody's listening to me now on this nationally syndicated radio show or anything like that. But I don't think that what happened between he and I this morning did any good for anybody. It's really made me very frustrated and my nerves are frayed.
He's Bomani Jones of the Mothership, Dan Le Batard Show, and Around the Horn joining us, Dan Patrick Show. I like talking about it, but I like talking about race if we move it forward. And I think it's about education. I think we all grew up. You probably had stereotypes of white people, probably had moments with white people. Same with me, with minorities. You grow up, and you know what? You're kind of formed sometimes by how you grow up, where you grow up. Then you get to think on your own because you have perspective here. I like that.
But I think I can speak for me personally and how I grew up, and I can't speak to how anybody else grew up. My parents are heavily involved in the civil rights movement. My mother, when she was 16 years old, led a sit-in movement that predates the historic one in Greensboro at the Woolworth Counter. My father got kicked out of college behind protesting and sit-ins and was integrally involved in the right to vote. A lot of the people you read about in civil rights books are people that are family friends of ours. Some more revolutionary than others. Like I know all those guys, right? Those are the people. Those are the people I grew up around. I went to school in a town called Waller, Texas, with a grand total of 1,500 people. I went through a life, dirt roads, whole nine, and I went through a life of being the black kid in the honors classes around basically nothing but white people all day long. And people in that town treated me fantastically. If I go back to that town right now, a lot of those white people we talk about would be thrilled to see me and are happy to see me and encourage me to do all kinds of things and to do more. And I'm not like a poor kid that needed the encouragement, right? I'm a child of privilege. Those people treated me fantastically well. A lot of those biases that people have about white people, I've been around too many white people and known them intimately, not just seeing black people on television, not seeing white people on television, like going to their houses and them letting me stay there when my car was broken down and everything else. I lived a life that simply did not allow me to be able to, with any sort of intellectual honesty, carry out these broad stereotypes of what white people are and what white people are not. I have some pretty clear ideas about how power dynamics affect people's behaviors and what they're oblivious to. But this idea that, we just all have them, we all grow up with them, part of that is a lack of familiarity. Part of that is mass media and everything else that's there. But after a certain point, we get to be adults, and you have to be able to look within yourself and recognize that regardless of what your fully formed view of the world is, there's a chance for you to evolve, and there's more information out there for you to get. So I think it's real easy for us to be like, well, I think everybody just has views about other races. Well, maybe that's true, but black people are the only people in this country that are just overwhelmingly and powerfully determined to be inferior to everyone else. We're the only people that all the stereotypes are bad unless you're talking about sex, music, or sports. Every single one of them, right? Even the sex ones are pretty bad when you start talking about kids and stuff. We're the only ones that really have to deal with this stuff. So people have biases and stereotypes of others, but no one has the stereotypical baggage that black people have to carry around every day. So I'm reluctant to just equate it. And that's why Cuban worried me when he says the kid with the hoodie versus the guy with a bunch of tattoos. The reason people are so frightened by tattoos is that there's a historical link that people put together with tattoos in jail and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody does that with hoodies. So if you're going to say, hey, I see a guy with tattoos, I walk across the street. Then I see a kid in a hoodie, and I go across the street too. Well, what the hell are you scared of with the kid in the hoodie?
Do you really think Cubans walking down the streets, though, Bomani?
Well, that's a fair question to ask. But even making that illustration, the fact that you want to make that point, he said to me on Twitter about walking down the street. He's like, so you don't cross the street when people walk towards you? I'm like, no, I don't walk down the street because if I got to walk across the street from them, they just gonna chase me and get me anyway. What are we talking about?
What if Bill Parcells or Bill Belichick has his hoodie walking down the street?
You see, that's where it's funny. It's the black kid in the hoodie. Bill Belichick doesn't look like a hoodlum with his hoodie that he cut the sleeves off. But that speaks to everything about that discussion, right? Yeah. That Bill Belichick in the hoodie just looks like he's dressed down. The black kid on the street in the hoodie looks like he might rob you. What the hell is that?
Before I let you go, Dan Le Batard said you'd be a #1 seed in the all-media Sports Jeopardy tournament. Since I'm hosting Sports Jeopardy, do you think you would be the #1 seed?
I don't know if I'd be the #1 seed, but I don't know how many people know more useless nonsense than I do. Like, I don't know if that's something to brag about necessarily, but I did a trivia competition when I was in college, the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge, and I was a charter member of their Hall of Fame. I wish I was making that up, but I'm not.
Okay, your favorite trivia question?
Oh, what member of baseball's 3,000 hit club has the most home runs?
Hank Aaron?
Yep, 3,771 is the one that people always forget.
Bang.
That's him.
Bang biscuit. Hey, Bomani, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Bomani Jones, ESPN, Dan Le Batard Show, Around the Horn.